Hi, my name is Blythe Daniels. I graduated with my master's from Concordia in December of 2012. I received my teaching license in about February of 2013 and was able to start doing some subbing in March. I've been working towards my ESOL endorsement since I graduated with my master's. I was the only one in my cohort who decided to continue on with some schooling, and I'm really, really happy I made that decision. The most important part of the program is not only what it's going to add to me as a teacher for my development, but also the fact that it's going to help me get my first job. And as we all know, that's a big deal when you're a teacher. In compiling my portfolio, I've learned a lot about what I've learned throughout obtaining my ESOL endorsement and going for my continuing teaching licensure. During the compilation of my portfolio, it's really allowed me the time to step back and think, well, what have I done in relationship to this or that? And what can I show or talk about that proves what I know I can do? The first competency I would like to talk about, competency 1, assess knowledge and skills of students in relation to long-term content goals and district standards, and determine the knowledge and skills each student needs to accomplish them. Well, recognizing and selecting the correct English language development content standards appropriate for the level with which you are working for a child is imperative for designing and implementing successful lesson plans. For the purposes of my work sample, my kinder students were ELPA Level 2. The standards I'm going to show you reflect the forms and functions of language we focused on during my 10 lessons, which were describing people, places, and things, and comparing and contrasting people, places, and things. Now, according to the state, for a kindergartner, ELPA Level 2, they should be working on simple sentences with the verb to be using common nouns and adjectives. For example, this is my blank. It has a blank. The second standard, early intermediate sentences with subject, verb, adjective showing similarities and differences. So here I'm going to show you my content standards from my unit plan from my work sample. The second artifact I have for my first competency is my student records that I took during the time I executed my 10 lessons of my work sample. I'd like to show you, I kept a chart of student performance. It includes many things. The first column is going to show their pre-assessment score. The second through 7th columns are going to show their performance on various performance tasks, worksheets that were assigned throughout the unit. And the second to last column is going to show their post-assessment score. The final column is going to show their learning gains. I'll reference this again in another artifact. I'll show it to you now. The students are listed by student number so as to keep their identity confidential. Here is the student assessment grid. So, the two tables shown below reflect the scoring and participation of the students. Most interesting to me were the students who didn't experience a learning gain of any kind. And in fact, I had one student who did experience a negative learning gain. And as you can see upon further examination of the charts, it It makes sense because the student was absent so often, and then the 2 days that they were in attendance were merely for the pre and the post test. So not only do student records allow you to keep an accurate assessment and reflection of how your students are performing, but it also allows for explanation if a student is struggling. The documentation is so key when you're a teacher. Competency 2. Design instructional plans that incorporate the knowledge of students' developmental levels, interests, abilities, and learning accomplishments consistent with content goals and standards. So, the lesson plan I'd like to show is merely a representation of my ability and strength to plan and write lessons, both engaging to students, but also centered around impactful academic state standards. The lesson plan also helps me as an introductory lesson to gauge student participation and interest in this topic, as well as the ability to follow direction. So I will take a second and I will show you an example of a lesson plan. This is going to be lesson plan 1 from my 10 lesson work sample. Here is the first page. And then the second page. Of course, you're not expected to read this. It's just to show you that I'm extremely prudent in following the Concordia format for a lesson plan. My second artifact for that competency, I'd like to show you an example of some student work. Not only are teachers responsible for creating performance tasks for students so as to assess what they know and what they can do, but we are also encouraged to incorporate the arts into the classroom as much as possible, and that's really important to me. I try to incorporate the arts into every lesson I teach. I've got 2 student samples of work to show you from the first lesson with the permission of their parents, of course. The worksheet was basically a blank worksheet with 2 blank dogs, and the instructions were to color and to make them look different. That day on that lesson, we had focused on learning words like spotted or striped. So you'll see in the example of the student work I'm going to show you that both of these students were able to demonstrate that they understood what we learned that day. They were also able to follow the directions of the worksheet. I'll show that now. Thank you. My third competency, which is to establish a classroom climate conducive to learning, positive classroom management, a safe and developmentally appropriate environment, efficient organization of time and materials, and effective transitions. For this, what I included was actually examples of my procedure. I'm really strict on procedure as far as when I create the lesson plan. I've learned that as a teacher, of course, and so is everyone, that you have to be as flexible as possible in anything that you do. But that being said, you need to start with a solid foundation. The group of kinders that I had for my work sample proved to be an especially difficult bunch. They were filtered from 4 separate kinder classes to create one small group of 21, and it was the last 30 minutes of their school day. So I was dealing with quite the group of kids. What I included as my artifact was from lesson plan 7, and much of that day became devoted to practicing new behavior styles and implementing new behavior management techniques. Another one of my artifacts for that lesson was the reflection written directly after I taught the lesson. The reason I included that was because it proved and it showed the success of the behavior management strategy that I implemented with the class. These kinders, as are any kinders, are so sweet and they want to learn. You just have to remind them that. For my fourth competency, it is implement instructional plans that employ a knowledge of subject matter and use research-based educational practices that reflect how students learn and are sensitive to individual differences and diverse cultures and encourage parent participation. This was something that I struggled with because I was only there for my practicum for a short time. It was hard to become as involved with the parents as I would have liked. In order to do so, especially because I was working with kinders for whom their parents I actually might never see to implement my work sample, I had to incorporate strategies of parent participation through homework. So what I did for my artifacts is I included both of the homework assignments that focused on talking with parents as well as gaining a broader, different perspective. In many ESOL classrooms, students speak one common language, for example, Spanish. In many of the ESOL classrooms I've either worked in, subbed in, or did my practicum in, that's not the case. There's actually many common languages. And so I like to play off of that and celebrate students' cultural differences. Both of the homework assignments ask the students to go home and speak with their parents. The first asks the students to have their parents describe them. Describe what makes them different from other kids, and then different from other kids in their family, and then different from other kids that they know, so that they're going to get different perspectives of who they are. The second homework assignment I thought was more able to incorporate the multicultural education, which is important to me as well, which I asked them to go home and talk with their parents about something that makes their family different, something that makes them unique or special. Now, mind you, these are kinders operating at a very low English language proficiency level, and that's okay, and I don't expect the kinders to come to me with having had extensive answers. But what I do hope is that they're having the conversations at home with their parents. And from what I was able to judge, many of them were, and I would consider that a success. Competency 5, which is to collaborate with parents, colleagues, and members of the community to provide internal and external assistance to students, their families, and if needed, to promote student learning. Again, because this was a very short practicum, I did struggle with how I was going to utilize the community. But I was working with my third, fourth, and fifth ESOL classes, and we decided to have a celebratory party for learning. We'd finished up the similar unit, also working on describing people, places, and things, but at a higher level. These children were operating at ELPA 3, and some were even exiting the program. So we'd had a very, very rough go at it. We'd also just finished our ELPA testing for the year, and so many of the students were beginning and in the midst of OAKS testing as well. So having a celebratory party for learning seemed quite appropriate. But Miss Daniels is not a millionaire, and the kids were well aware of that. So we decided to get some donations, thus including members of the community. I took a picture of the Albertsons where we received our donations from, but specifically cameras and photographs are not allowed in my school. So I will show you a picture of the Albertsons. I can tell you all about it. It's the Albertsons over on 59th and Cully. And they donated some cookies and some punch for a class party, and it was fantastic. The kids felt so special, and to really see the members of the community get involved like that was so nice for everybody. It was also a chance when I did get to meet a few of the parents from some of those students. They were also able to bring in donations from home. I had a really great time with that. For competency 6, which is to evaluate student progress in learning, refine plans for instruction, and establish alternative goals or environments for learning when necessary. I am actually quite proud of my ability to evaluate and assess student learning gains. I would like to show you, in fact, a graph for my student learning gains. I broke it down by males and females and by pre and post test. And what this graph is showing you is that I had about an 18 to 20% learning gain with my kinders, and that there was not a large differentiation between the way that I instructed males or females. And the reason I can tell you that is because their scores were quite similar. Breaking things down like that is very important for a teacher because oftentimes we don't recognize when perhaps we are more apt to teach in a style that is more conducive for learning for males or females. So it's important to step back and kind of assess the data with which you've been given. The second artifact in that competency I'd like to talk about are my differentiation strategies. I find oftentimes while teaching that these can be both pre-planned and done on the fly. Pre-planned differentiation strategies, I'm a big advocate for peer tutors. I believe that students can work with each other and learn a lot by teaching. Especially students who are able to get things done quickly sometimes lack that ability to be able to teach that in someone else. So I believe strongly in peer tutors. The second thing I use as a differentiation strategy were that I had a couple kinders who weren't able to sit still or work on their worksheets. And for them, I was able to modify the assignments and have them show me what they could do and what they knew up on the whiteboard or on the chalkboard, some sort of alternative situation that would allow for them to have a better performance or at least show me what they could do. Competency 7, document and report the progress of students in achieving content and district goals and standards. And the first artifact, of course, were my student records, which you saw back in competency 1. My second artifact would be the learning gains that I reported to Concordia University in May of 2013. I mentioned earlier that my students showed a learning gain of an average of 18%, which is fantastic, meaning that if they scored an 82% on their pre-assessment, that they would score 100% on their post-assessment, as an example. For competency 8, I'm to use emerging research on teaching, learning, and school improvement to enhance practices. I was really, really lucky during my practicum. I was actually able to experience 2 trainings. The first training I was able to participate in was for the OAKS, which is the Oregon Assessment of Knowledge and Skills, which is Oregon's standardized test. I was able to participate in the training, both to successfully administer and assist during. Secondly, I was able to participate in a training for strategies, test-taking strategies, to teach 2 ELL students who are taking the OAKS. Both of those were really, really, really lucky. And if that wasn't enough, my second artifact, I was able to participate in an ALPA training and test administration training. So I was able, during my practicum, to participate in administering the OAKS and the ALPA, which, again, the OAKS is the Oregon standardized test, the test, and the ALPA is the English language proficiency assessment, which is used to kind of document kids and to tell you where they're at as far as their English language levels are concerned. For competency 9, I am to participate in designing, evaluating, and improving opportunities for teaching and learning in an educational institution. For artifact 1, I was able to join a committee with my cooperating teacher, and she was on the school improvement committee. One of the things that happened on the school improvement committee is that we had school improvement day. And that was so fun. The kids were so excited. They came to school dressed, ready to work, and they were able to spend the day beautifying the school. Members of the community came and helped, and what really made their day was when Home Depot came to show their support and drop off supplies. The kids felt really special. We were able to plant some new flowers, pick up garbage, paint some areas that needed some painting that kids could do. Kid-friendly beautification project. It made a big difference. The kids are so proud to come to Scott School. The second artifact I have is just that I was able to attend and then reflect upon the school science fair. Here's a little flyer for the school science fair. Scott School Science Fair, yay! I had a great time. I learned so much. not necessarily about science, but about how much the kids could be invested into science. And I was able to take that feedback to the next staff meeting and explain how important I thought the science fair was. And it was really up for debate whether or not it was going to be continued each year. And I think what it came down to is that the staff that was questioning it really hadn't been in attendance to see kind of the magic that was happening with the kids. So I was really proud to have been an attendee. And finally, for competency 10, which is to collaborate with one's coworkers to evaluate one's performance and enhance your teaching career, I have included reflections and recommendations from both my cooperating teacher and my supervisor. I included my performance evaluation from a midterm evaluation as well as a final review from my cooperating teacher. And then as a second artifact, I included my final evaluation from my supervisor. During my practicum, my supervisor was able to come and observe me a total of 5 times. And through that, she was able to see growth, suggest change, and demonstrate when progress had been made and successes had been won. I've had a great time putting together this portfolio, and I've had a great time sharing it with you. I hope you have too. And I will look forward to growing and learning more as my teaching career continues. Thank you.